You know how it feels like the advice on what to eat is always changing? Well, it's happened again. The federal government just dropped its new dietary guidelines for Americans. And honestly, it's a pretty big deal. So, what does this actually mean for you and your grocery list? Let's break it all down. Okay, so you're probably asking why the big shakeup? Well, to really get it, we've got to look at the problem these new guidelines are trying to solve. And frankly, the picture they paint is pretty grim. We're talking about a national health emergency. The numbers, well, they're stark. Let's just start with this number, over 70%. That's how many American adults are now considered overweight or obese. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's more than 2 out of every 3 adults walking around. And the financial cost of this? It's absolutely massive. A whopping 90% of our entire country's healthcare spending goes toward treating chronic diseases, and so many of those are directly linked to what we're putting on our plates. And maybe the most alarming part, this isn't just about adults, it's hitting our kids too. Nearly 1 in 3 adolescents in the US is already showing signs of prediabetes. That's putting them on a path toward really serious health issues later in life. So, what's the common thread here? The guidelines point a big, flashing arrow at one main culprit, what's known as the standard American diet. You know the one. It's just flooded with highly processed foods. Which, of course, brings us to the solution they're proposing in this big policy reset. It's a fundamental shift. Really, it's a call to get back to the basics. And at the very heart of this new approach is one super simple but really powerful message. Eat real food. That's it. That one idea is the foundation for this entire shift. Okay, but real food, what does that actually mean, right? Well, take a look. On one side, you've got whole, nutrient-packed foods. On the other, all that highly processed stuff they're warning us about. I mean, the difference is pretty obvious when you see it laid out like this. So, to help us all wrap our heads around this new approach, they've rolled out a new, simplified framework. Let's check it out. Here it is. And you can forget those super complicated pyramids you might remember from school. This one is way simpler, just 3 tiers. Down at the bottom, the foundation, you have whole grains. The middle is packed with vegetables and fruits. And right at the top, we've got protein, dairy, and healthy fats. The whole point here is simplicity and clarity. All right, so let's drill down into the specifics. What does this new pyramid actually mean for what you should be putting on your plate every day? Now, we're actually going to start at the top of the pyramid because this is a really big change from the old advice. The new guidelines emphasize making protein a priority, and not just sometimes, but at every single meal. We're talking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they get specific. They want you to get protein from a variety of sources, both animal and plant-based. They're also big on how you cook it, favoring methods like baking or grilling instead of frying. And for those of you who like a hard number, they give you a target. Aim for about 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein for every kilogram of your body weight. And this illustrates that idea of balance perfectly. See? It's not about being anti-meat or exclusively pro-plant. It's about getting that variety, from a good piece of red meat to a bowl of beans. Okay, moving down to the middle of the pyramid. This part will probably sound familiar, but it's absolutely crucial. Fill up your plate with a wide variety of colorful vegetables and fruits all day long. The guidelines really stress eating whole produce whenever you can. But hey, if fresh isn't an option, frozen, dried, or canned are totally fine. The one big catch, you've got to check that label to make sure there are no added sugars. And the daily goal to shoot for is about 3 servings of veggies and 2 servings of fruit. And now we're at the foundation of the pyramid, grains. And this is another area where they're drawing a really clear line in the sand. It's all about whole grains on one side and refined ones on the other. What they're saying is we need to be prioritizing those fiber-rich whole grains, and, this part's a big deal, we need to significantly reduce refined carbs. You know, things like white bread and pasta. The target here is somewhere between 2 and 4 servings a day. Okay, so that's the what to eat part. Now, let's flip the coin and talk about what the guidelines say we really need to limit or even avoid. And this brings us right back to that other side of the real food divide. The number one thing to cut back on? You guessed it, a huge dramatic reduction in highly processed foods. The stuff that's just loaded with additives, unhealthy fats, and tons of sugar. The guidelines get really specific here, targeting what they call added sugars. And just to be clear, we're not talking about the natural sugar you'd find in an apple or a glass of milk. This is all about the sugars and syrups that get pumped into foods while they're being made. So how in the world are you supposed to spot these things? Well, they're sneaky. They hide on ingredient lists with all kinds of names, like high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, or agave. Here's a helpful rule of thumb. If you see an ingredient that ends in O's, like fructose or sucrose, that's a pretty good sign it's an added sugar. So what does that look like in practice? They give us a pretty clear and simple target. Try to keep your added sugars to no more than 10 grams per meal. So there you have it. The new playbook for American nutrition is out, and its message is surprisingly simple. Just eat real food. It's a call to get back to basics. But this leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? In a world that runs on convenience, totally dominated by these massive food industries, can a simple message like eat real food really be enough to turn around a national health crisis? That's definitely something to chew on.